Welcome everyone to the regular council meeting of Monday, May 8th, 2023. Just to remind everybody that members of the public can be present in the council chamber during the meeting. And also note that the webinar will be recorded and published on the city's YouTube site. So first item up on the agenda is the adoption of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes before you tonight. The first one is the Governance and Operations Committee meeting for April 24th, 2023, the regular council meeting, April 24th, 2023, and the Governance and Operations committee meeting for May 1st, 2023. The recommendation is before you. Can I have someone make that motion, please? Councillor Martin, Councillor Wilson second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public question period. Seeing no one, thank you. Okay, on to item number 3, communications. And CEO McClure, if you don't mind taking this item.
No, for sure. So council, before you, what you have is a recommendation or a resolution to ask council to support the Skills Center, that there is a funding source that they need a sponsorship from. It is common in municipalities. Part of it is that there's a responsibility that the city takes on from making sure that the usually a reporting component and that there's a flow through mechanism, that they just can't give the money to the entity itself, but it comes to the city, and the city makes sure that the things are operating correctly, and then that's how we support it as a sponsor. And so then you see that, again, it's a good program. We've been doing it a number of years in different types of projects and been successful, and so this should be uncommon for a council to see a entity coming forward, having a funding source that says, I'm sorry, we can't provide these funds directly to you, but if you have the city sponsor you, we will then be able to do that. Part of that has to do with just, again, accountability, that the city is in line and okay with this particular group and what the project's going to be involved with. And then secondly, just on that financial side, that there's a set of eyes that are looking at it and being responsible for the funds that are if the council has any other questions for that.
Any questions for CEO? Okay. So the recommendation is before you. Can I have someone make that motion, please? Councillor Benson, Councillor Butler. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we have a number of bylaws to work through tonight, and the first one is item 4.1, and I'll hand that over there. CEO McClure again, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. So we've spoken about this a few times. Community charter states that a 5-year financial plan must be adopted and must be adopted before May 15th every year. And the fact that it's a 5-year and you already have a previous one sort of allows the ongoing spending and collection of revenues to go on while you're building your current 5-year budget. And the one thing here is that it's really important for obviously your 2023 year, because you want to make sure that you've got all the expectation on your revenues and your expenses and whatever capital projects are. But also items as you go into the future, makes you take a look, makes you see, can we afford these things, what projects are coming down the pipeline, what kind of funding sources you might be able to have. But it also doesn't just automatically make that project happen. So there's a lot of things that need to go on into those future years. And as you start to get out into 2025, 6, and 7, they become a lot more challenging as you look out 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years here on what the projects will be. But this is what the idea is. We met with staff, have met with council, done a few presentations on what they see. We've got the Trail Memorial Center, sort of ongoing work that needs to be going on there, Trail Aquatic Center as well, ongoing paving, those sorts of things. And so it's good for staff to be looking forward planning and understanding what kind of funding do we have available. Again, each year we set a tax rate, and that's to make sure on the operating side that you've got your fundings for for your operating fund, and again, what sits inside that would be your general government, would be your protective services, that would include your contract with RCMP. It's gonna deal with your contract with GFL to do your garbage pickup. It's gonna deal with your aquatic center, parks, as well as your transportation. That's your operating component of things. But it's also inside here in this 5-year financial plan, because we've done it in different time stages. Back in late December, we passed the rates for utilities, so that would have been your, again, for mostly for your water and sewer. And they tend to be, they are a fund that sort of sits by themselves, and because we need to have those rates out, kind of council approved and or out early January, so that we can allow our residences to get those bills and be able to bring or have the opportunity to pay that in time to get the discount, which is important. So we want to give them a good amount of time to be able to do that. But again, that was one piece that you're working back on in December, was the utilities, and then you start looking into your operating. And your operating fund is mostly a tax funded. I think we've talked about that before. And on some of the slides in the budget presentation, you can see what component the taxes make up of your of what happens in the operating fund. Of course, there are also user fees. So again, when someone goes and uses the pool, or someone uses the rink and they rent it for their commercial hockey, those are revenue. Someone uses the airport, there's a fee that we get from the airline for having a passenger fee. So all those revenues are there, but they tend to really be a lot less than what is happening from your taxation, which is not uncommon. That's the main driver for municipalities, is that way of collecting your taxes. When I look through the current year, and then we've discussed this as well, one line, if I can see, and it's sort of hard to talk to you, but on the revenue page, you'll see that there's, property taxes for the City of Trail are 17.5 million. That's the budget for 2023, and including that will be the debt component. We have a number of major projects that we've undertaken, like the Skywalk Bridge and the Riverfront Center, that needed debt funding, and so that's a debt levy that we place, which is a bit different than your operating levy, but all combined it becomes taxation. The other component there is the collection for all other agencies. So you can see that we're also collecting almost $8.5 million on behalf of the school, of the RDKB, and the hospital, and as well as a small amounts for a BC assessment. But it's also, I think, just really important for council to be aware that when we're doing that collection, that there's other entities that we're collecting those revenues for. On the expense side, the one thing I really kind of wanted to point out was a couple of items. In particular, if you look in 2025, it really sticks out with a big sore thumb, is that I have a proceeds from borrowing of $10 million. And again, we still got a few years before we get to that, but based on what staff had brought forward on the water utility in particular, on some of the major upgrades that need to happen, this was a number that would provide funding for not only 2020, we would kind of get it in 2025, but it would be projects for 24, 26, 27, and 28. So just again, a lot of times it's a good idea to borrow. Now, will we need to borrow? Well, we've commented and committed to having a update to the water master plan. Bring that back to council when we do our budgeting for 2024, which again will happen sooner than you expect, and we'll be in front of that this year. But just wanted to again just point it out because of the large capital nature that you see, and when you would see that is if you go to the next page, which sort of has our 5-year financial plan, and you see we've got some ambitious projects for capital. Not only is it a big budget at operating fund in that the $30 million range, but the capital for 2023 is budgeted around just over 12 million. You're looking at over 15 million in 2024, another 10 million in 2025, almost 14.5 million in 2026. And again, although 2027 seems like, oh, we must be getting a break, we just know that that's 5 years away from us now. We don't know what demands will be on our buildings or our roads and our utilities. So it just an important piece that running municipalities is expensive, and in particular, a lot of times when you have to replace water lines, it's not something that people get to see very often because it's buried in the ground. And we have a lot of older infrastructure, which is very common for municipalities of the ages that we are. And other than you know, and we're seeing that this year, we've got a really big trenchless program, and that's where they realign the sewer in place, so there's no digging it up, they're able to go in and basically cure it or fix any issues with the sewer and get it back running, you know, the way that it should be, not leaking out. And so we got a big 2-kilometer project in 2023 that'll be going on. I know that that's been happening. You know, we get some notes out to the public recently that they're in town. They're checking, making sure that they're able to make those, make that in line. They call it in situ form. So it's usually, but they're big cure in place is what they classify it as far as redoing your sewer lines, and it's very effective. Because if you don't have to dig up a hole that's, you know, could be very deep in the ground and you're able just to realign it from basically manhole to manhole, it saves a lot of money for the municipality, and it's a great ingenuity that has come forward and saved municipalities millions of dollars. You don't get that sort of ability with water lines. It's not something you can go in and kind of realign those. But we will have a bigger conversation with that when we get into next year's budget. There isn't much more I had to say about that. I don't know if anyone has any questions on the 5-year financial plan. I know that sometimes you can look at it differently as compared to the number of meetings that we have. When you're looking just at the water utility, the revenues and expenses, and then just the sewer, and then you've got the capital budget as a kind of standalone, and then you've got the operating budget. So when you look at that, those are all individual pieces and lots of spreadsheets that were provided to council. But this is it all being added together, and you'll notice that it's balanced, so that's a good thing. And so it means that the numbers are in place for the year. But it is just that, it's a budget, and if there's a reminder for council that if something comes along and something happens that the staff say, hey, we've got a problem here, or we've got something that we'd like to do, that can come to council and you're able to adjust your budget as long as it's justified for the funding's available and whatnot. This is something that is committed to as a directive from the province, but you're allowed to make changes throughout the year. Again, to your worship, I don't know if there's any questions from the council.
Any questions from council? So Colin, I did have a quick question.
Okay, yes, good.
Hopefully it's quick. No, I'm just kidding. I was wondering about the flag tax. Does that ever change? I know it's in our 5-year plan here, but will it be $260 per parcel of land going forward for 5 years? Or are we going to do that yearly?
Well, it is, and it's a great question. So again, right now when we pass the bylaw and the tax rate bylaw, those items are in. Okay. And we note that in the different layers of your tax rate. Our tax bylaw is that there's a flat tax for that. We haven't adjusted it. These are all things that I think that will be important to be revisited when we get into next year's budget. This year has been a bit more of a challenge in trying to handle both the year end and the budget. But because that's one of the things I also noticed on the water is that we sort of have sort of a parcel tax that's been set there for quite a while and has not changed. And yet, inflationary wise, that is something that has gone. Inflation has changed. But I think that there's a larger conversation to be had on what can residents of Trail afford, and again, this infrastructure is so important that you don't want to continue to push it off without repair or replacement. So, because the last thing that we want to have is the community saying, hey, we've got a problem with our Bear Creek well, or we're not able to get the water that we need for drinking water. So those are some of those really key components of municipalities and utility side.
Yeah.
But yes, that is something that we will look at and say, is there a sense that needs to go up, or is it something that we will continue with? The reasons behind it, I think, are still valid, but something that we will revisit and bring back to council.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so the recommendation is before you. And that the recommendation is that the 5-year financial plan for 2023 to 2027, number 2925, 2023, receive its first, second, and third readings. Councillor Butler is making the motion, Councillor Martin seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, carried unanimously. Thank you.
And I apologize, there was one last thing, that's good. One thing I wanted to notice, while I had the opportunity, was just one of the last slides in this particular document was sort of what's the city of Trail, kind of average resident, what's the effect on them? Because I think that's always important. Because this is where staff bring to council, but council basically has that particular control. Because we're going to talk a bit more here when we go into the tax rate itself, because there's some things there that are, and council has no control over, and so that's sort of important, I think, for the community to know, especially when they get their tax bill that has City of Trail written right on the top front of it, and not many people take the time to look through and say, oh, hey, there's school tax in here, there's hospital tax, there's also the regional district, and some of the factors that affect that. But with the current year, we did have a big rating increase in water in 2023, and so that increased that by $32 and that for the discount, and then sewer was less at 14 and resource recovery at 4. And the property tax on an average single family dwelling at 4.47% is about $46. Now again, you'd have to have the perfect house to kind of make these calculations work, so that's the other thing that can be challenging for people. The average increase on residential property went up 17%, just under 17% is what I'm going to use as a number. And that's on top of a 32% increase in 2022. So you're almost had a 50% increase in residential values in 2 years. When I look at the calculations, basically in the past 5 years, your housing prices have doubled as far as the average residential property. And that's had some other tax shifting effect, and we'll talk about on the tax rate. But I think it's important that the first thing that we do in doing that is that we don't just say, oh, hey, we just got an extra 17% more taxes. That number is always adjusted. The mill rate is always adjusted to calculate out what taxes you would have collected in 2022 at the new assessed values. And then once we have that number, then we're able to apply whatever increase to the mill rate. And certainly what you will see if you're kind of trending is that because there's been such huge increases, the mill rate's been dropping significantly. And you'll see that, we'll look at those numbers, but you'll see that, but you also see on some of the other entities, it's been going up because their values actually have been increasing. So then we see that particular in major industry. So that was all. I just want to say it's $96 is the increase for the average effect on a single family dwelling, which is now at almost $388,000. Around last year's 332, so that kind of again gives you that increase. And that $96 means about $8 a month if you're looking at it on a monthly basis on the increase of what it costs the average home in the city of Toronto.
Thanks. Okay, so we are on to item 4.2, the tax rate bylaw, number 2926/2023 for the first, second, and third readings. Senator Holland, did you want to?
Yeah, please. Thanks, Mayor. This is such a key component. You have your tax or your 5-year financial plan, and then it's the question is how you're going to fund it. What council really has control over is that yes, you can go and say I want more grants, or you could try to say let's increase the parking meter revenue by increasing the fines or increasing what it costs for parking, but it had such a small effect on the overall amount, and that's just where your taxes are the tool for your council to be able to increase the revenues that you need for your operating expenses. And we do know that inflation has been a big factor, and the other component that is both a negative and a positive is that there's a lot of entrepreneurial components that happen in the city of Trail. The fact that you've got the airport, and COVID was not very friendly to the airport. No one's flying, no one's traveling. The fixed costs that are in there, whether or not it's sort of staffing, and yes, you're not going to have this, maybe as much staff or as much repairs and maintenance going on, but still the fixed costs that are involved with the airport. But we've really seen some huge improvements, even over what was budgeted in 2022. We're seeing that we're on 2 flights a day. That's been fantastic for individuals using, residents and businesses using in the area, in the region, using the airport. In particular, because we know that in Castlegar, they're going down to 1 flight a day. And so even having the two, a lot of them are full. It's been a real positive, and so we hope that continues with our partnership with Pacific Coast. Now, when we're looking at the tax rate, as I noted before, because we've had this major increase, basically 50% over the last 2 years, the mill rate has dropped down, and in 2023 is at 2.5 per thousand. So that was up around 2.8, and I think it was even at 3 in 2021. So you can kind of see how that has been dropping. And if you didn't drop it, that's where a resident would really get hit hard. Is that if you kept the mill rate where it was, and because the assessment had gone up so high, you would really get a lot more income or a lot more taxation revenue. And that's why we make that adjustment to make sure that we lower the mill rate to be able to counter that. Now, at the same time that we, being, I should say, council, has the ability to set the rate for what happens for taxation, the other entities that are involved, when I say that, that's regional district, the hospital, and school tax, the province sets what the tax allocation will be. So in the same breath, at the city, in our documents that we have sort of a fixed approach. It's like we're going to expect about 61% or 62% from our major industry. We're expecting this set amount from residential, this amount from business. So whatever happens with the assessed values, we go back and say, okay, this is what share of the pie is. And so that takes into account that if you didn't do that and you had 50% of residential property, increase in assessed values for residential properties, you see a huge tax shift where major industry, business, etc., it hasn't had that type of increase, would really start to carry the tax burden. So that's where on that fixed approach, you make sure that consistent, and it's not always just residential that can have that increase in assessed values. It can happen in business, it can happen in major industry as well. But this way it makes the pie always, the sharing ratio is always the same. Now, when you go to these other entities, there is no kind of set sharing ratio. There is a multiplier that is applied by the province on the properties, and it has not changed in long. I would say it's over 20 years that it's changed. So what we have been seeing is a significant tax shift, in particular from major industry onto the residential properties, because the residential properties assessed value have really increased. So instead of having that fixed approach where heavy industry would be paying this portion of tax, that doesn't happen. It just automatically starts to shift over. And again, that's just an entity. And as much as I know how hard our director that's at the regional Kootenay Boundary board and all the board members there are trying to keep again a small increase of about 4%, 4.5%, similar to what we got on our tax increase. That increase itself, pretty much in line. But what happens is because of the tax shifting and the increase in the residential value, then a lot more of what the tax pie for the regional district Kootenay Boundary has been pushed onto the residents. And so, as an example, we talked about on that average home of basically $388,000, and that 4.47% tax increase is a $46 increase on your municipal taxes. And yet, if you look at the RDKB in this tax shifting, even though there's only one up and again 425, 425, I believe, the increase to a residential, this average home is almost 10%, and that's because of this tax shifting. Again, same thing with the regional district Kootenay Boundary Hospital. And again, there's another entity where you are sharing your assessed values with more of your neighbors as well. And the requisition actually went down by 10,000 over the previous year, except because of this tax shifting, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that $10 increase is about 16.5% increase to that average home. Same thing with the school tax; they're at 11%. And so then overall, the increase on that average home is $189 over the previous year. That's just for the taxes. It has nothing to do with utilities, just for the taxes, which is 12%. But in that, the municipal property taxes is actually quite a small portion of that increase. So I just think it's important that the community know that council looked closely at what we were doing and was cognizant of the effect on our residents, and inflation is affecting them as well with the grocery store and trying to contain whatever increases that we had to the minimum we could, but also just that residents know that it's outside of the control of council on these other entities and the increases that people are seeing. And again, in the same way, so if your home, say, is only increased 10%, which is still quite a bit, you will actually see likely a decrease in your taxes this year, even though some of these have gone up. I'm talking about on the municipal side, but that'll be filled in by some of these increases that are in effect for these other entities will collect for. And if your tax increase is significantly higher than that average of 17, there's going to be some people that are going to see a much bigger bill in the current year than over previous years. And I think that's all. I again try to preach it because I know that council will likely be in the grocery store trying to get their eggs and bread, and someone will be coming along saying, hey, you guys said the tax increase is only 4.47%. Mine is much larger, and I just need council to be aware and the community to be aware that there's other factors at play here.
Council have any questions for CEO Rupert this time? No. Okay, so the recommendation before you is that tax rates bylaw number 2926/2023 receive its first, second, and third reading. Can I have someone make that motion, please? Councillor Benson, Councillor Cashel, second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And just a note, in your document here, I see that the city trail taxes are due at the end of the business day of July 4th, 2023.
Great reminder, yes.
Okay.
And that's to get your 10% discount, or sorry, not to get a 10% penalty, I should say. It's a discount. Forgive me. That was a mistake. You don't get it as a discount. You gotta pay what's on there.
Yeah.
If you don't, if you pay it after July 4th, you get a thing for
10%, yes. Yeah.
And part of that is to remember that the city has been operating, we have operated for 6 months, and then we ask you for your payment halfway through the year, so we've been kind of operating on borrowed money.
Okay, so the next bylaw is the 2023 Reserve Funds Expenditure Bylaw number 2927/2023.
Yes, and this is a unique one for me. I have not experienced this particular type of bylaw, and I would hope that as we discussed in our budget meetings that we need to do some bylaw updates for our reserves, and a part of that will be adding some wording that will note that any draws or contributions to the reserves will be in the financial plan, so then this becomes sort of redundant. But based on right now, you have bylaws that state that you have reserve bylaws that state that if you're going to borrow or take money from the reserve, that you need to have a bylaw giving permission to do that. So that's why it's here. These numbers I think that you've seen before, maybe not in the same fashion, but we did talk about, here's your capital works reserve, we've got a balance at the end of December 31st of 2022, we're going to put some money into that, and then here's the value, and then we're down below, you can see what we're spending the next on. Okay.
Any questions? Okay. So the recommendation is before you that the 2023 Reserve Funds Expenditure Bylaw number 2927/2023 receive its first, second, and third readings. May I have someone make that motion, please? Councillor Hanson, and second, Councillor Butler. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, thanks everyone. And so item 4.4, this one is over to Mr. Isaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. The property owner of 1792 Daniel Street has made application for rezoning to allow for short-term rental accommodation to be operated from the dwelling on the property. The property is zoned hillside, single-family residential, R3, west side. It's developed for single-family use. The new property owner is proposing to utilize the dwelling as a short-term rental accommodation and as her secondary residence intermittently, as she relocates here to our area. So in 2005, council did enact regulations within our zoning bylaw to allow for short-term rental accommodations. And in doing so, the decision was made that each application would be considered on its own basis. And so for any property in our single family, single and two family, and hillside single family residential zones, R1, R2, and R3 zones, if someone wishes to operate a short-term rental accommodation, they do have to apply for rezoning. And while their zone would stay the same, so R3 would stay the same, it would be followed by a designating that it is permitted to have short-term rental accommodation use from within. And the reason council did that at the time was so that any of these applications can be considered on their own merits. We will, as required, hold a public hearing if this bylaw does receive its first and second readings tonight, and we'll seek input from impacted property owners in the area to determine if there are any particular negative impacts that they would want to bring forward to council. In the West Trail area, it is a bit more dense, and concerns around increases in traffic, lack of sufficient off-street parking, increases in noise, or depreciation of neighboring property values can be raised as concerns with short-term rental accommodations. However, because this particular property is limited in the number of bedrooms, and again is being intended to be used intermittently by both the property owner and for short-term use, it isn't thought that there will be a very material impact on the number of vehicles to the neighborhood for visiting. I should note, and it's included in section 4.3 of the reporting, that our zoning bylaw does require that off-street parking be provided for each sleeping room within a short-term rental accommodation. And this is a 2-bedroom property, and there are 3 off-street parking spots on the property, so there is sufficient spaces off-street to accommodate the vehicles. So from those considerations, it isn't felt that there will be a real material impact on the neighboring properties. However, of course, we will hold a public hearing. It would be scheduled for just prior to the May 23rd meeting, and we will give the necessary public notices to all impacted properties within 50 meters, as well as the advertising in the trail times. But with that, it is being recommended that council proceed with zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 2928, and give it its first and second readings at tonight's meeting.
Okay, council, so the recommendation is before you. Councillor Hanson and Councillor Benson, second. Thank you. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay. So we will move on to the council committee reports, and Councillor Benson, you're up first tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Silver City Days kicks off tomorrow with the Citizen of the Year celebration at St. Michael's School at 7 o'clock. And I just want to send a congratulations to Peter McCurdock on this very well-deserved honor. The Riverfront Food Fair opens Wednesday at 10 o'clock and the Midway 3 o'clock. And you can find a schedule of the events at silvercitydays.com along with the parade route for this Saturday, which all of council will be at. And the Trail Ambassador program, it wraps up this Friday night with their pageant. Tickets are available at the box office. And on behalf of council, I'd just like to thank the 6 candidates that have put their names forward and wish them the best of luck on Friday night, and send a special thank you to Randy and Esther, our current ambassadors, on a very successful year. That's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Councilor Butler? Okay, thank you.
I just have one, I just want.
Or Benson,
Yes.
sorry.
I just, for me, I just want to thank you. Councilor Benson and Councilor Cottrell, but I just know that you have been energized everybody on getting Silver City Days, and I just know how much staff has enjoyed working with you, and just it's really boosted morale. I just want to thank you from being someone that's responsible for staff, and just how appreciative you are of council's input and the representatives that have been there, and your drive and your support. And it's just because of
Councilor Cashel, we've had
You've been inspiring.
we've all had fun, it's been great, so we're looking forward to it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Councilor Benson. Councilor Butler.
Just two things, Your Worship. On the 26th of April, along with yourself and Councillor Cashel, I attended the Selkirk Nursery students presentation on homelessness and trail and the perceptions from the community. Found it very interesting. And on the 6th and 7th, both days, I was at the Modern Living Show, which was presented by the LCCTDS Sustainability Committee, the LCIC, Neighbours United, Regional District Boundary, and the Roslyn Sustainable Committee, along with the Skills Centre. And it was a great event, brought together the market vendor, food vendors, along with, as well as many businesses in our community, and actually businesses from afar as well. So it was a wonderful event, and just like to congratulate them on a job well done. So that's my report.
So did they have a really good turnout?
Yes, I think
Good.
so, in the thousands over the 2 days.
Oh, really? Oh, good. I didn't have an opportunity to get out there. I was hoping they'd have a good turnout. What a great idea. Okay, any other questions for Councilor Butler? No? Okay, Councilor Cashel.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. On May 2nd, I attended the Community in Bloom committee meeting. And the committee wants to thank the mayor and our council for the support that they received this year. In particular, also, they want to thank CAO McClure, Public Works Director Chris McKajic, and Superintendent David Moorhead for the ongoing continued support that the committee gets from Public Works. Also want to make notion to Rachel Brown, their coordinator. She's a contractor who focused efforts to get volunteers out, including Mayor Jones and I, that volunteered to do some work on the Esplanade to get it ready for Silver City Days. And I think you'll note if you're down there, you'll see that it's definitely been improved by their efforts. So I just want to acknowledge that and extend that thanks to city staff and mayor and council. Thank you. That's all I have, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Cashel. Any questions? Okay, on to Councilor Hanson.
For once, I am speechless. Unfortunately, you know what, the last little bit here, there hasn't been too many meetings, so nothing to report, except
Okay.
for looking forward to Silver City Days and participating in that this week, and a bunch of meetings scheduled next week, so.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. I don't have any committee reports. I just want to mention the council that I spoke to Mark Stevens, who's the RDKB Manager of Emergency Programs. He is interested in coming to talk to council about their program and our role in the event of a emergency operations center activation. So, but unfortunately, he's busy with the Frechette right now in Grand Forks and what's going on in Fruitvale and everywhere in between. So hopefully we can get him before the end of June, before wildfire season starts to come and give us some talks. That's it for my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councilor Martin? No? Okay, Councilor Wilson.
Nothing to report, Your Worship. Looking forward to a fun and safe weekend. And the weather looks really good, so hopefully we get a good turnout. And looking forward to seeing everyone out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. Okay, I have a few items I want to report on the past couple of weeks, meetings that I've attended. The first meeting was with Deb Sluggett from Take a Hike Programs, and I'm not sure if council knows about this program, but it is a program that helps youth who are struggling in school and are at risk of dropping out, and they help and support them to transfer their life, make sure that they're attending school and participating. Currently, there are 20 youth in the full-time program and 15 youth in the extended services. This past summer, they were able to get a mental health position, which was made available 12 months of the year now to the youth program. And that means even through summer, the students have access to mental health and support. And over the summer, new students are connected to the mental health support program. Not only is this kind of support provided, but the youth also have access to healthy and nutritious food in the morning, at lunchtime, and on some weekends. So it's a great program to, be made aware of, because it's something they do really good work in our community. April 26th, I did a welcoming address to the Trail District Library Symposium. There was participants there from the East and West Kootenays. It was really good to see so many people traveled into the area, had great comments about the Riverfront Center, what a beautiful building it was. I hope that the rest of the symposium went well. I stayed for a little bit in the morning and then left around lunchtime, but it looked like they were having really great discussions. I also attended, as Councillor Cashel said, the Suffolk College Nurses Homeless and Trail Survey results, and it was actually a really good workshop, lots of information. Oh, and sorry, Councillor Butler was there as well. April 27th, I attended the Trail and District Chamber of Commerce Business After Business event, and they were showcasing the newly renovated and updated Tech Interpretive Center. Councillor Butler and Councillor Wilson were there, and it's a very nice area. They've really brightened it up and updated all the information, and it was just a really nice visit, wasn't it? Lots of people there to check it out. I also wanted to mention that on April 28th, I marched in the local 480 Steelworkers 39th Annual Day of Mourning March, along with Councillor Cashel. And as most people know, April 28th has been designated the Day of Mourning. And each year, workers, families, employers, and communities across the province remember those who have lost their lives on the job, and we all renew our commitment to creating healthy and safe workplaces. On May 2nd, I participated in the Trail Health and Environment Committee Air Quality Working Group. And May 3rd, I participated in the RCMP Southeast District and Local Government Workshop in Kelowna. And the purpose of this full day workshop was to provide, and it was new to me, I haven't attended before, but education on the RCMP structure, processes and policies around the RCMP. And we talked about recruiting and placement of officers. And we're really hoping that these kind of meetings will continue in the future to build relationships and accountability within the communities. And it was for the mayors and the community reps, I think it was, yeah. So yeah, it was a good meeting, lots of information. It was a full day, but coming home, I just want to say that going through Grand Forks, could really notice the difference in the water level between going down and then the day after. It was just amazing how much it had gone up. It was, kind of scary to see. So, and then on May 5th, the Mayors and Chairs Seasonal Preparedness 2023, and it was actually mayors and chairs from across the province, and it was basically an update on what to expect in the future as the seasons and the weathers are changing. And the conversation was around the weather is going to be much warmer this year, expecting more flooding, and being well prepared for forest fires in the communities. So as everyone else has said, I want to thank the Silver City Days Committee and all the organizations and everyone involved in the work and the time that's gone into it this year. I know there's so much excitement in the community and everybody is so looking forward to this event. It's kind of fun to see. So I just, you know what, have fun and be safe, everyone, and also happy Mother's Day. Mother's Day is on Sunday to all the mothers in our community. And that's my report. Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you. So on to the consent agenda. So we have 2 items under the consent agenda. Is there any items that council wants to pull for discussion? Okay. So the recommendation is before you that the terms of the consent agenda be received for information. Can I have that? Councillor Benson, Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Any new business from council? So item number 8 is the department reports, and we have the Regional District Kootenai Boundary Building Department report for March 2023, and the recommendation is that the report be received for information. Can I have someone make that? Councillor Cashel and Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And the next item on the agenda is adjournment. Councillor Cashel and Councillor Becker. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone.